Hello and welcome back to Lyre. We will be continuing where we left off, which, if you recall, is at the very beginning of the trial of Ritcher. Well, Lord Ritcher. In the previous video, you got to see the little reunion between Ritcher and Lyre, where Ritcher got to see the aftermath of Bjorn fighting with Lyre. Lyre has a black eye now, and it was being obscured by the helmet that he has to wear now. But Ritcher was able to see it. He was also able to clean himself, and he was taken towards, the trial. Ritcher asked Lyre to basically not intervene in case the worst comes to worst for Ritcher. And Lyre basically says, I probably won't be able to, because I love you. But Ritcher was saying, like, no, please don't, just if something bad happens to me, or if like they sentence me to death or whatever, you have to let me go. I was like, no, I will love you forever and ever. Such dedication. Anyways, but yeah, so but without further ado, let us begin the trial of Lord Ritcher and see how it goes. On cue, all of the royal guards stamp their feet, including Lyre. Sir Lyre Reed. Lyre steps forward and gets on one knee, lowering his head. His tail is tucked between his legs, almost completely limp. My king. You may remove your helmet. Lyre stands back up and slides the helmet off his head. I can hear a few people make noises of discomfort in the crowds off to the side. Adrift's expression doesn't seem to budge. Do you swear to tell the truth, not only as a citizen of Lyre, but as the captain of the royal guard? I do. Very well. As the individual who made the arrest of Lord Ritcher, you may describe your account of the evening and what happened to the best of your abilities. As you wish. Lyre moves to the center, standing in front of me. He beckons to the people sitting off to the sides. Most of you know that I was assigned to Lord Ritcher on his arrival in the Kingdom of Lyre as his personal guard. This was a decision made by King Raynar himself. In the time that I have spent with Lord Ritcher, they have shown no intentions of committing treason or murder. They simply did what they were requested to do by the king as a newly appointed financial advisor. Suddenly, the bear on my left speaks up. Were you given any other specific duties when guarding this lord? He speaks in a very gruff voice, almost interrupting Lyre. Nothing other than protecting them and guarding the room at night, along with guiding them around the castle. They're foreign, so King Raynar wished for me to help them understand this place. As I was saying, similar to their overall time spent here, nothing out of the ordinary had happened for most of the night leading up to the murder. Ritcher and I attended the ball and decided to leave early. If my memory serves correctly, Lord Ritcher left the party before you, after your dance. A few of the nobles look at Oliver as he says this. His sister stands up next to him, adding onto the statement. They left the ballroom alone, slandering us on his way out after that shameful display. I followed them almost immediately after. And I don't appreciate your... No more interruptions from the jury, please. The twins sit down, one of them waving a dismissive wing in Lyle's direction. You may continue, Lyre. I met with Lord Ritcher at the ball, and we spent some time together before he decided to leave. After I found Ritcher, I escorted him back to my room, as it was closest to where I had found him, and he had caught a cold. I knew that my quarters had a fireplace that had already been lit. We stayed there for some time, not intending to return to the party. Then what happened? After a while, a servant came to my quarters saying that King Raynar had sent him to retrieve Ritcher. The king had business that he wished to discuss with Lord Ritcher. Ritcher left with the servant, and I stayed behind, knowing he wouldn't need a guard in Raynar's chambers. He clears his throat and continues. After some time, I went to check on Lord Ritcher. There were no guards posted at the entrance of the staircase. I found that a bit odd, so I ran up the stairs. When I reached the top, I found Ritcher, lying on the ground while Bjorn stood over them, sword drawn and attacking him. I ordered Bjorn to lay down his sword, and then found out that Raynar had been killed. Sir Finn had been sent to alert the castle. I didn't think that it was Richter who had done it, not for a second. Even so, I arrested them and locked them in a cell. He stepped back and Andreas nods his head. Very good. Describe the scene of the crime, please. Lyle steps forward and continues. Well, Raynar's chambers are at the top of the highest tower, with a spiral staircase leading up to it, the entrance usually guarded by 2 members of the Royal Guard while he's there. After examining the room, we found blood on the curtains and drapes. Other than that, there wasn't too much blood anywhere else. There was almost no moisture or snow on the carpet near the window, so it's not likely that it was ever opened. The body was lying on the floor behind the bed. Liz takes a piece of parchment and passes it around to the nobles. Each of them looks at it and grimaces. The dagger. The dagger used in the crime was found to the left of the body. There were clear signs of struggle, separate from the sword marks left in the floor from Bjorn's bastard sword. Raynar had clearly been caught off guard. There were rips in the drapes by the window, indicating that his antlers had torn through them during the struggle. We even found gold flakes from one of the antlers lining the tears. He pauses, taking a deep breath before continuing. He's doing a really good job so far describing the event. He's not lying about anything, but I wouldn't want him to do that. Yet he's still leaving out some truth. Several canine guards, along with myself, picked up scents from the room. 4 people had been in the room around the time of the murder. Sir Bjorn, Lord Kadaj, King Raynar, of course, and Lord Richter. There's chatter among the crowd, but Adrius raises his hand to silence them. Is that all you have to present? For now. Adrius isn't too happy with his response, but continues anyway. You may join your guards. Lyle goes up the steps, putting his helmet back on as he takes his place in the center of the guards. He looks down at me for a moment, giving a barely noticeable nod in my direction. Leif? Yes, Your Majesty? Please give your reports on the body. Of course. Leif steps forward and holds out a piece of parchment, reading off of it. When the body was examined, 2 stab wounds were found in the stomach, along with one in the chest. The throat had also been slit across the front. He squints his eyes, holding the parchment closer to his face. His eyes and head were positioned so that he was looking out the window. Clear signs of struggle were found on the tips of his fingers. I can see Adrius getting a bit uncomfortable in this chair. I actually feel kind of bad and avert my eyes. There were also tear stains on his cheeks, and the body was very clearly fresh. Adrius cuts him off as Leif becomes lost in his description. Thank you, Leif. Leif steps back up to the side of the throne and Liz looks to me. Lord Richter, you may now present your side of the story. I sit there for a moment, not really knowing how to start. The hall is silent and I can almost hear my own heart beating. Being put on the spot like this is very stressful. I guess I should start when Lyle and I separated. I clear my throat and begin. Everything happened just as Sir Reed said it did. At least according to his perspective. The servant whose name I am not aware of came to fetch me earlier into the night. I told Lyle to stay behind and I left for the king's chambers. But he's your guard, is he not? Should he not accompany you everywhere? The servant did not accompany me, saying that I should be able to find my way to the chambers quite easily, insinuating that I would not need a guide. I was only doing what seemed appropriate. He says nothing, waving his hand, allowing me to continue. As I made my way down the hall, I came across Sir Bjorn and Sir Finn standing guard at the entrance to the staircase. They let me pass and I made my way up to the room. When I reached the top, there was an area with a large window on the ceiling. Ahead were the doors, and when I entered, that's when I noticed something was off. The room was dark and the curtains and drapes lining the ceiling blocked out a lot of the light. I couldn't see Raynar, so I assumed that he wasn't there. That's when I noticed the damage. Broken portraits, large tears through the canopy of the bed. I followed the trail of broken objects and found his body. At first, I didn't know what I was looking at. The entire scene left me shocked. I didn't know what to do and everything was spinning. What happened next? Well, as most of you know, I had been quite ill. I was having constant headaches daily, not to mention the few days that I spent comatose. I assumed my mind couldn't handle the sudden shock and I began to suffer from similar pains. I tried to reach the door to warn someone and tell them what had happened. In the crowd behind me, I can hear people whispering back and forth. Even the nobles are talking amongst themselves. You'd think that they want to hear this. That's when Bjorn entered the room. Right on cue, I would say. He started by spouting off a question for Raynar, but he quickly found out something was wrong. Finn was with him at the time, but Bjorn told him to stay at the door. He found me, collapsed on the ground, and immediately rushed to Raynar's body. He assumed that I had killed him and attacked. Of course, not before sending Sir Finn away to alert the castle. That way he could have me all to himself. If Lyle hadn't arrived in time, he would have killed me on the spot. You didn't mention knocking on the door. Everyone looks up and a few people in the crowd starts whispering. I didn't. So, you didn't knock on the door? Neither did Sir Bjorn. People in the crowd begin to murmur. Adrift doesn't look pleased nor convinced, but when is he ever? I assume the rest of your account is similar to Lyle's? Yes. Very good. Sir Finn, please tell us your side of the story, if you will. Finn turns around, taking off his helmet, facing the nobles and Adrift. Bjorn and I were guarding the entrance to Sir Raynar's chambers that night, as you know. We allowed Lord Ritcher to pass a few minutes before our shift changed. Bjorn and I went up the stairs to let King Raynar know that we were going to be leaving when Bjorn found out what happened. I was told to alert the castle, and I did so. I was able to quickly find the commander of the castle guard and alert them to the murder. Soon, everyone in the castle knew. Is that all? There's one last thing. The reason Bjorn's scent was found in the room was because he would check in on King Raynar every once in a while. As meat-headed as he is, he's dutiful. Each time, he returned to our post, and I noticed nothing out of the ordinary. Anything else? Adrift almost seems bored. No, that's it. Finn placed his helmet back on his head and resumed his position amongst the guards. Unfortunately, that gives Bjorn a nice alibi. Moving on, we will present some unbiased individuals who have had enough interactions with you to be able to judge your character. Starting with Leif. Leif walks down the steps and stands in front of the throne. So far, everything seems to be going smoothly, but something feels off. Leif, please detail your interactions with Lord Richter. He clears his throat and begins. My lords and ladies, Lord Richter has been a good friend. In the time that he has been here, he has shown nothing but kindness and understanding. He can be a bit odd at times, but no more than the rest of the staff in this castle. I have tended to their wounds and helped him with the head pains he experienced frequently. They've been an excellent patient. Over the past few weeks, he seems to have almost blended in with the nobility residing in this castle. He has become closely acquainted with Sir Reed, and they work very well together. Not only that, but as the assigned financial advisor, I'm told that he did his job and did it well. He saved the king a lot of money with that party. He pauses, bowing before Adrift. That is all. Leif steps back, and even though all of the things that he said were kind, it feels like it wasn't a lot. I guess we haven't gotten to know each other that well aside of him caring for me. Thank you, Leif. Please stay. I just have a few questions for you. I feel a tightness in my gut as he says this. Yes, Your Highness? A few days before the solstice, I believe an incident happened. I ask because I was not there, but I'm told that it was a very theatrical incident. Richter here came storming into a meeting between my father and the war minister. He started spouting off things about what happened 10 years ago, things about my mother. The assassins from the canyons also came into question. Am I correct? I want to speak up and tell him what really happened. I have a strong urge to do it, but I think the best thing to do right now is let Leif talk. Oh, yes. Lord Richter has been suffering from terrible nightmares lately. He merely believed that he had some sort of premonition. I hear a few people chuckle in the crowd behind me, and I wish that I could turn around and yell at them to shut it. What does Leif think he's doing? He had awoken frightened and confused, demanding an immediate audience with your father. Before things go any further, Lord Richter collapsed and fell into a bit of an unconscious state, though I assured your father that I was just letting him rest. Your father even told me himself that it might have been brought on from a story that he told Lord Richter the day before. He even admitted to me that he regretted being so open about something, knowing that it troubled Richter. Actually, he might just be saving my ass. Still, I so badly want to tell them. And yet, he wasn't open. In fact, Father was never too detailed when it came to talking about Mother. And yet, Richter here knew many details. This is definitely going downhill. I want to tell everyone about Tiger and what's been happening to me. But I hold myself back. I just have to trust Tiger as handling things, wherever he is. Although things aren't looking too good, and the more time passes, the more I yearn for a sign from him. It is a bit amusing that Lord Richter was so interested in Elena's death. The vixen cuts in, talking in a very small voice. I was very close with her, and even I'm not privy to most of what happened. In fact, Raynar rarely spoke of such things when he did. It wasn't much. I fail to see how this has anything to do with what I've been accused of. Quiet! I'm afraid you don't get to decide what's relevant. Remember, speak only when spoken to. I mentally berate myself for not holding my tongue. Still, this is a mock trial if I've ever seen one. Thank you, Leif, for being so cooperative. I now wish to hear from Minister Elizabeth. Leif walks back up to the steps to the side of Adrius' throne, and Liz takes his place. You may begin, Minister. At first, she doesn't say anything. She's most likely thinking about what to say and how to say it, which I honestly appreciate, knowing that my life is possibly at stake. Before the throne room can become completely silent, she speaks up. Lord Richter and I did not have the best first impression. I actually was introduced to them during the incident that Leif described. It was not a problem at all, really, as I try to be tolerant of things like that. I can't say that I've gotten to know them too well. That would be a lie, but the interactions that I've had with them have been, for the most part, normal. I even had time to chat with them during the Solstice Ball. With them being from Erin, like myself, idle chit-chat came easily. I can't say much about what happened after that. I watched them dance with Sir Reed, and then they left. Even outside of this trial, I keep hearing about this dance. Why is it so important? There's a pause in the conversation, but Liz answers after a few moments of contemplation. Lord Richter and Lyle danced together shortly before leaving the party. Certain people have been spreading gossip, but that's none of my concern. As far as I know, it was a dance, nothing more. Interesting. I did not attend, but I have heard the gossip as well. Adrius looks down at me, sneering. Thank you for clearing that up. I needed a good source. I am aware that most of the people in this courtroom were present during the Solstice Ball. Lady Oswell? The Lady Owl stands from her seat, her wings hands resting at the center of her waist. Yes, Your Majesty. Your brother speaks so highly of your good memory. I feel like everyone could use a nice refresher. I don't like where this is going. Not one bit. I have a very strong feeling that he's about to use another out-of-pocket instance to smear my image. And all I can do is just sit here and take it. What was it that Lord Richter said before leaving the ballroom? I've been hearing so much about this little outburst lately. If my memory is as good as you say it is, I remember him saying something along the lines of, "To all of you shams who smile at me through your teeth, only to have your good opinions crushed by something so trivial, enjoy yourselves." God, I really did say that. Her memory is impeccable. She doesn't even have a way to cheat like that. This was said after the night had turned sour by their display. Her brother butts in, but Adrius holds up his hand, silencing the two of them. Thank you for refreshing our memories. I think it was warranted. Adrius turns to look at her, and she looks at him too. At first, I'm afraid something might happen, but Adrius just quietly responds. Thank you, Minister. I now call forward Lord Kadaj. Liz walks back up to the right side of the throne, and I look over to see Lord Kadaj rise from his chair. He saunters up the steps, stopping where Liz was standing. Would you have me do the same as the previous two? Yes. Very well. He turns around and shoots a glance my way. I get a feeling from him that I'm not too ecstatic about. Hopefully this isn't too bad. I'll be short and sweet about it. My exchanges with Lord Richter have been very pleasant, yes indeed. I believe that we both share a similar goal. The cooperation of the Three Kingdoms. I'm sorry, but before you continue, I have to ask. I'm sure that this is on everyone's mind, but why were they able to pick up your scent in my father's room? It's quite simple, really. King Raynar wanted to meet with me, same as he did Lord Richter. He had informed the both of us of these meetings during the party, if I remember correctly. What was this meeting about? He only meant to officially appoint me Minister of Foreign Relations, nothing more. We actually left the dance together, and he was very eager to break the news. The guards followed us to the entrance and stood outside. Raynar had no issue climbing the steps, even considering how tipsy he was. The meeting was quite short, as we mainly just needed a quiet place to discuss things. After that, I left. Now I'm wondering if I was going to be appointed as something more than the financial advisor. I am not able to gauge whether Lord Richter committed this crime or not. My impression of them is that they're a good person. If that is all. King Adrift. Lyre turns around from his position among the guards, taking off his helmet and facing Adrift. Yes, Sir Reed. I wish to bring a crucial piece of evidence to everyone's attention. Adrift raises an eyebrow, and everyone else in the room also seems gripped with curiosity. If this will help with this case, then I see no reason why you shouldn't. Lyre walks over to the table with evidence and carefully picks up the dagger that the killer used. When he returns, he holds it up to Kadaj. Seeing the dagger makes my insides turn a bit. Kadaj is looking at Lyre, confused about what's going on. I also don't really understand why Lyre would bring up the dagger now all of a sudden. The entire room is filled with hushed whispers, and throughout it all, I spot Adrift staring at me. He's probably trying to see what reaction I have to the blade. Lord Kadaj, could you tell me if there are any qualities you notice about this dagger? Anything you might be able to point out? Kadaj gently takes the dagger from him, holding it up to his gaze by the pommel and studying it for a moment. Lyre doesn't take his eyes off of Kadaj for a second while he does this. It is simply a dagger. Most commonly used with thrusting weapons, but this one is interesting in the design of the blade. Almost like a kris. So you're familiar with daggers like this? Yes, I have daggers similar to it. I do not know why you ask this. He hands the dagger back to Lyre, holding it by the blade. It has already been determined by our castle blacksmith that this dagger is ordinary and could be purchased in Erin or Lyre, correct? Liz speaks up from the side of Adrift's throne. Yes, that was determined some time ago. Without a second opinion. I recently consulted a good friend of mine, a blacksmith with experience trading with all the kingdoms. Eden of Grimrock. I look to my left and see Lord Grimrock stir in his seat. You took vital evidence to one of the village's blacksmiths? Yes, it's one of the reasons Bjorn attacked me, as unwarranted as it was. I didn't hear of you getting permission to do such a thing. No, I did not. I accept full responsibility for my actions and any punishment that follows. Lyre did all of that. He's really sticking his neck out for me. Your punishment will be decided later. Though, looking at your face, I'd say that you already got your punishment. As unwarranted as it was. Continue. Lyre turns and looks down at me before continuing. Eden said that assuming this dagger would be forged and bought in a place like Lyre or Erin, it is a very common mistake. The origin of this dagger, however, is Dryer's. Surprisingly, the crowd behind us is silent, listening to what he has to say. Typically paired with thrusting swords, this dagger can be used by itself in grappling. Kadaj lets out a scoff, but Lyre ignores him. Thrusting swords were invented in Lyre and became exceedingly popular in northern Erin. However, that does not rule out the fact that a rondel dagger could come from Dryer's. That is the case with this dagger. How can you tell? It looks very plain to me. The guard and pommel of this dagger is made of Aryamite. It's not gold. The crowd breaks the silence and begins to spread whispers throughout the room. They sure are getting their entertainment. Aryamite, for those of you who don't know, is mined in the south. It is of a similar quality to gold, but equally rare, and hard to distinguish. He draws a sword from the sheath of his back and holds it out to the crowd. Just as rare as Vekrite. Adrift leans back in his throne, his eyes trained on the blade, but his expression is the same as it's been for the past few minutes. Lyre holds up the dagger. This blade is from Dryers, and it is unlikely that Lord Ritcher would have come into possession of it. Only someone who is of the highest class of noble would own something of this quality. Lord Kadaj, do you fence? What exactly are you implying? He's implying nothing. Adrift leans forward in his throne, his eyes finally leaving the dagger and falling upon Kadaj. However, what do you have to say about this, Lord Kadaj? Kadaj pokes his fingers into Lyle's chest, his claws clinking against the metal. Yes, I fence. I participated in many duels back in Dryers. However, if the Roddle dagger is a rapier's best friend, then the paring dagger is its wife. It is known that I much prefer those two weapons together. He lets out a scoff. Honestly, accusing me of using such a civilian tactic. Kadaj doesn't even care that Lyre just accused them. He only seems to care about his reputation and his choice of weapon. The crowd seems to find this funny. There's an uproarious of laughter, and even a few of the nobles are giggling behind their hands. Lyre stands there shocked, but quickly regains his composure. This killer didn't use this dagger with a sword. They only used the dagger by itself. Lyre, enough. The clothes on my back are from Dryers. The plates we eat off are from Erin. Even if this dagger is from Dryers, it doesn't change anything. I think it changes everything. Ritcher is not wealthy enough to purchase a foreign treasure like this from an Erin market, let alone going to Dryers and getting it himself. Why do you say that? Until recently, they've never been outside of their own kingdom. As far as I know, they've only recently become a noble. That's the part that I find most odd in all of this. There's too many questions that I have about his origin that simply go unanswered. That's not the point. Send for Eden. He'll explain it better than even I could. I'd rather hear from the person who sold this knife, but I'm afraid that's just not possible. Lyre, I humored your request out of the fairness, but this is ridiculous. Fairness? My voice sends an echo up towards the throne, bouncing off the wall behind it. The three standing before me turn and look down, having almost forgotten I was there. You speak of fairness, yet this entire trial is botched. Be quiet! I grow tired of this mockery. Shut up. I did not kill your father, but if it will put a smile on your face, kill me now and be done with it. Stop talking! I'll participate in this charade no longer. Silence! Adrift yells this, his words bouncing off the walls, the entire audience silent as the grave. Lyle's looking down at me, shocked and nervous. He then dons a face of disappointment. Kadaj was shocked at first, but now seems to be studying the scene as it plays out. Both of you, return to your places! Kadaj begins to walk over, returning to his seat. Lyre stands there for a moment before reluctantly taking his position amongst the guards. Before Kadaj can return to his seat, I call out to him. You once asked me where my allegiances lie? Adrift jolts his head in my direction, but says nothing to stop me. Where do yours lie? Kadaj stops walking, standing in place. His tail swishes from side to side before turning around to look at me. With Tigran, Ritcher. As he takes his seat, Adrift begins talking as if nothing had happened. There's one more individual that I would like to question before anyone gives their verdict. Who else could he possibly bring up? If I recall, that's everyone I interacted with that night. I call upon the servant. The one who tended Lord Ritcher the night of the solstice. What? What could he possibly contribute to this? The servant stands up from their chair and begins to walk their way over. I hadn't noticed him until now as he was sitting towards the back. I might have noticed him when I entered the room if my mind wasn't already overwhelmed by everything else. At this point, I'm sure Adrift had already won, but would he even need to go any further? Especially pulling a card like this, it makes no sense. Before I can come up with a conclusion myself, I look over at Lyre. Instead of facing forward like the rest of the guards, he turns his head in my direction. I can't really see his face behind his helmet, but I get the feeling that he knows what Adrift is up to. The Badger walks up to the side of the hall and takes his place in front of Adrift at the bottom of the second row of steps. They turn around to look at me, their expression neutral. I can't shake the feeling that something is wrong. Please state your name. It's Gerhard, Your Highness. Would you please describe the events of the night and what happened? Please be sure not to leave out any details. Adrift, this man was never questioned. What are you? Adrift turns to her, raising his hand. Please, continue. The servant bows low, swaying their arms out behind their back. Of course, Your Highness. I have been one of the servants tending to Lord Ritcher for a while now. Of course, most of the time it doesn't really feel that way. You see, Lord Ritcher rarely accepts the help of the servants, leaving most of his tasks up to himself. Of course, it's not something that I'm unfamiliar with. Your father was the same way. He glances back at me, but Adrift cuts in. Don't look at him. Just tell us what you know. Gerhard lowers his head and continues. I was asked to retrieve Lord Ritcher for his meeting with King Raynar. Knowing he had already left the ball, I went searching for him in his quarters, but our lord was not there. Assuming he had already known about the meeting, I guessed that he had already left for it. That was until I remembered his close relationship with Sir Reed. I figured that I would go and check the good knight's quarters to see if he knew where Lord Ritcher had gone. Adrift. Adrift shoots a look at Lyre, but Gerhard continues. When I arrived at the door, I heard something I believed I shouldn't have. At the time, I didn't really understand what I was hearing, but looking back on it, it all makes sense. Whispers about the king. What? That is not true. Quiet! If only I had figured it out then, but I foolishly brushed it off. I assumed that Lord Ritcher was only talking with Sir Lyre about the audience that he would have with the king soon. The other thing that I found odd was the fact that Lord Ritcher was with Sir Lyre in his own chambers. As his guard, it should be known that Sir Lyre would accompany Lord Ritcher to his own chambers. He was ill. Silence, Lyre. I did not wish to be rude by lingering outside the door for too long, so I knocked on it. It took a while for them to answer, and I heard whispers from the other side. Once the door opened, however, How should I go about this? Lord Ritcher was standing before me with mussed clothing and hair. Sir Lyre, however, was practically naked when I caught a glance at him through the doorway. Several people in the crowd gasped, and a few of the nobles scoffed and groaned at hearing this. That feeling that I had in the ballroom is starting to come back. The embarrassment and humiliation. I look to my left and see Liz with her face in her hand. It was quite a sight. Why is the servant lying about me? Could it be that they're the killer? No, that doesn't make any sense. Don't tell me that they actually... Disgusting. I hear a chair scoot across the floor as Kadaj stands from his seat. I fail to see how this has anything to do with the problem at hand. Even if it's true, I see no issue with it. Well, of course you wouldn't. I've heard scandalous stories about you two. Scandalous stories that dried a little bit too soon, if you ask me. Kadaj sneers at her. Stories? Hayden and I are that famous? I'll be sure to let him know. Everyone quiet! The throne room quiets down and Kadaj takes his seat along with the others. Finish your story. Gerhard's shoulders slouch and he continues. I look over at Lyre and he's fuming. I informed Lord Ritcher about the meeting and then left. I thought nothing of the whispers and plot at the time, but I should have known. I'm so sorry, Your Majesty. Please forgive me. There is nothing to forgive. Thank you for your account, and you may return to your seat. Gerhard begins to walk down the steps and off to the side, but Lyre throws off his helmet. This is ridiculous. He's lying. None of that happened. You've spoken out of turn too many times. You're going to silence yourself before I replace your helmet with a muzzle. Do you understand? Lyre opens his mouth to say something, but looks at me and steps back. With this, Gerhard walks back to his chair. Good. My legs feel weak as I look around the throne room. I glance at the nobles, and most of them are looking at me with a scornful gaze. Liz is the only one who looks concerned. Adrift turns to them and speaks. My lords and ladies, it is time for you to cast your verdict. Slowly, each of the nobles stands for their chair, Liz being the last to stand. At this point, I feel empty. All I can do is glance at Lyre every few seconds and hope that things turn for the better. I look over at Leif. His head is hanging low, and I can tell that he doesn't like where this is going either. We are going to start with you, Minister Elizabeth. The throne room is dead silent, and I can see her look up at Adrift with a pleading face before looking down. I vote that he's innocent. Hearing the word come out of her mouth was a nice bit of validation, but it wasn't enough to quell my dread. The next noble, the small stoat, raises his paw slightly and gives his verdict. I vote that this young man is innocent. There is clearly something more sinister at play here. I mean no offense towards your late father, Your Majesty, but please consider this as a possibility. Another innocent verdict. Adrift glares at Lord Braedon, but makes no move for a rebuttal. He has this look on his face like he knows with absolute certainty what the result will be. Even if he doesn't, I know what his answer will be. And I have a feeling that I know what the other nobles' verdicts are too. That feeling has poisoned my stomach, and I have a feeling that it will kill me with the final vote. Guilty. Before I even realize it, Lord Rhaena has raised her paw and cast her vote. He was taken red-handed and is clearly demented in some way. Before I can even want to deny her claim, Lord Galen bangs his cane on the floor. Innocent. I can only hope that true justice will be delivered. He looks at Adrift as he says this, his long beard shaking with each word. Is this what your father would have wanted? Another lord who thinks I'm innocent. Guilty. Guilty. 2 more votes. And they were fast too, without any explanation. And it's even now. Lord Grimdale stands from his chair, his seat scooting back as his large body rises into the air, towering above all. I vote this boy guilty. I feel my air leave my lungs as my chest tightens. The 3 voted innocent, 4 voted guilty. I fall to my knees and look down at the ground. No! I hear Lyre let out a faint groan across the steps, but it sounds muffled. In fact, my ears are ringing and my entire body feels a bit numb. He didn't do it! You! I hear Lyre begin to run up the steps, but I see 2 guards rush him down and grab him by the arms. Nobody says anything at first. All that can be heard is armor grinding against armor and Lyle's grunts. Lyre, I will have you removed from this room if I hear another word out of you. Do you understand? He says this in a cold voice. I've never heard him speak like that. I just keep looking down at the ground, hoping everyone will just forget about me. Maybe Adrift will just throw me in a cell for a long time. At this point, I wish that I could go back to my cell. I could hear footsteps approaching me from ahead, and they sound like hooves. They stop, and a few moments later, Adrift addresses me in another sharp tone. Look at me. It doesn't register at first, but after a few seconds, I look up to see him standing over me. Lord Richter, you have been found guilty of the murder of King Raynar Ossian. This includes treason, regicide, crimes against peace, and the sowing of discord throughout our great kingdom. And I'm afraid mental agony is not an excuse for such a crime. His words rub deep into my skin, but I can't feel the anger. Everything is still numb and I can't stop thinking about just going back to my cell and curling up into a ball. My head is even starting to hurt again. I feel as if everyone's eyes are on me. Figures I can't even see. As I said before, the two of us are very different. This is all just a game to you. If I'm being honest, you're right to believe that. That's how it's portrayed in this cruel world. He looks over at Lyre and then looks to the nobles standing on the left before bringing his gaze back to me. Our profession has always been seen as a game. Some are better at playing it than others. He bends down so that his eyes are at level with mine and lowers his voice to a whisper. You've always been my opponent in this little game of ours. Ever since the day you and that cat arrived here. In my opinion, it only makes sense that you would arrive at such a drastic measure so soon. And I'm afraid you've lost. Another pain in the sides of my head hits me. He stands back up, throwing his cape back behind his shoulders. Don't feel bad about it, though. You did your best, and I don't blame you for trying to get away with it. Those who are out of their element often have to live by one's wits. What? My eyesight is taken for a moment as I feel my body pulled away from reality. Before I can even realize what's happening, I'm thrown to the ground, crashing into a hard object. All I can do is cough and sputter as my body slumps against the wall behind me. Fear, anger, shock, sadness. These emotions overwhelm me on a scale that I'm not even capable of comprehending. Or maybe I'm just too numb to it. Tears rush down my face, and I can taste blood in my mouth. The back of my head carries an immense pain, and one of my arms feels limp. My other arm is clasped to my stomach, blood pumping out of the fresh wounds and seeping into my clothes. The thick crimson substance floods out between my fingers, staining the golden brown fur. Standing over me is him, a figure clad in dark leather cloak, brandishing a slender and vicious dagger, dripping with blood. His garb is also covered in blood. No. Through the unbearable pain, I catch a glimpse of their face only for a split second. Raynar coughs up blood and reaches out a hand, the arm shaking and weak. Please. The figure kneels down, swatting the hand away. The hand Raynar was extending to his son. Adrift. He leans in, pushing Raynar's head back by his antlers and dragging the knife across his neck. It cuts deep, and it feels just as real as last time. The pain is awful, and I can feel my grip on reality fading. How did this happen, though? And where are his antlers? He had already grown them back by that point, right? No, this is impossible. He wasn't there. He wasn't... As Adrift lets go of Raynar's head, he slumps back into his recent position, and Raynar looks up at him. Adrift looks angry but scared at the same time. His eyes are wide open, and I can't get an accurate read on his expression. It's like he's conflicted or lost. Gritting his teeth and looking back with regret? No. He's just a coward. A weak, spineless coward. It's confusing and the pieces aren't all there. But this has to be a sign from Tigran. I know Adrift did it. I know it in my bones. As the life leaves Raynar's body, I can feel all the anger and hate from the past few weeks rushing into my own. When you have nothing left, revenge can no longer seem like the worst option. It couldn't be helped. Ah! Yelling at the top of my lungs and without hesitation, I push myself out of my kneeling position, lunging forward at the deer. I hear the impact before I can even feel it in my fist. You bastard! My knuckles smash into the side of his muzzle, spinning his jaw, as he's thrown back. I have to throw the punch using both of my hands as they're chained together, but it lands just as hard. The chain from the shackles flings out and whips him across the face, slinging blood onto the floor, along with the blood that spits out of his mouth. Adrius! Your Majesty! I hear Liz and Leif yell out, along with several nobles and everyone in the crowd letting out shocked gasps of horror. I collapse to the ground, feeling like all the energy that I had left was spent doing that. His crown flies off of his head, landing to the ground near me. Immediately I noticed that the gem on the top has cracked, bits of it scattered across the floor. I don't have much time to think about why I did it and what's going to happen next, though. Adrius stumbles back, dazed and confused, before tripping over the step. Adrius! Oh my god! I try to rise into a kneeling position and look up to what made that sound. As I get on my knees, 2 guards tackle me to the ground, forcing me onto my knees. Even with the force of the 2 men pushing me down, I still managed to glimpse what had happened. Adrius is propping himself up against the stairs, eyes full of shock. Blood rushing down the side of his head, from where his antlers snapped off, dripping onto his clothes. There's a large cut on the bridge of his snout, and his nose is bleeding. That must have hit his head on the steps and broken the antler. You! Leif tries to rush to his side, but Adrius pushes him away. Get away from me! He looks at me, his eyes filled with rage. I've never seen them like this. I've never seen him like this. Arrest him! Arrest him now! Take him back to his cell where he can rot! He's the one that did it! Lyle, I was right the first time! He killed him! I feel a guard's arm wrap around my head as they try to gag me. Lyle! I look around the room, but I don't see him anywhere. Liz and Leif are standing there shocked, Leif slowly inching towards Adrius, trying to help him. It was him! Adrius killed... The guard shoves what I think is a rag into my mouth, pulling on both sides and tightening it. The nobles are rushing to Adrius' side and the crowd behind us, in a commotion. I hear people running around, adding more to the chaos. Adrius, please. Let me. Where's Lyle? This comes out as a whisper as I can almost pick up a hint of fear in his voice at not knowing where Lyle is. Where is that dog? I want him put down now! Where is he? Don't just stand around. Find him! Liz, have the gates to the city closed. Nobody is getting in or out until that mutt is found! The 2 guards lift me and drag me out of the throne room. Your head will rot in the dirt, bastard! Everything feels like it's moving in slow motion, and all I can do is watch as the chaos ensues. Let go of me! I try to wiggle out and stop the guards, but as I do, one of them brings their fist back and slams it in my face. To be continued. Thank you for your patience. Oof. Well, the trial, you kind of knew that it was going to end like this. Well, not end like this, but you knew that it wasn't going to end in a good note. So yeah. I'm hoping that Lyle got out and is trying to make the escape or figure out how to make the escape for him and Richter. And I'm curious about the vision where it shows the little, I was about to call him a name, the Adrius killing his father, because there's 2 things that could be happening right here. The anger that Richter is feeling towards Adrius and the whole sham of a trial is influencing what he's seeing, or that's what actually happened. Because it just seems a little too coincidental. But I mean, it is possible, I suppose. It is possible that Adrius did murder his father because his father was taking the kingdom down a wrong path or something. I also feel that Adrius and Lord Grimrock, or Grim whatever his name is, the bear, along with Bjorn, were in cahoots. If Adrius is the real killer, then those three were probably in cahoots in order to try to control a kingdom. Perhaps Lord Grimrock, or whatever his name is, influenced Adrius, into trying to take over the other two kingdoms or expand or something. Probably take over the other two kingdoms, Dryers and Erin. So he kind of looks like that type of person. I mean, he's even wearing chainmail to a trial. Like, what did he expect to be, like, attacked? But yeah. So I also feel like the owls and perhaps the vixen were a little too quick to judge. I mean, the owls also look a little prejudiced. So, that might be where that came from. But the vixen, you know what to say about foxes. You can't really trust them. They're always plotting. Yeah. What else? Yeah. The future of Richter and Lyle is very uncertain. But obviously, this is not the end of the story. There's more to come. This is just, I guess, the end of this. So, write down in the comments what you think's gonna happen, and thank you all for watching/listening. If you would like to play Lyre yourself, you can find it over on itch, and you can find a direct link to it from Atmac's Twitter page, which is, right here on the screen, and will be linked down in the description. And if you would like to support the project, because they do have a Patreon, you can support them on Patreon and get early access to builds of Lyre before everyone else, including myself, because I do not yet subscribe to Lyre, the Patreon. Well, the Patreon, you know what I mean. And aside from getting early access, there are also drawings and other things that most nobody will get to see. And usually those are some saucy stuff. Some things that you might want to look at if you're of age. But yeah. So go support, support them by signing up to their Patreon. And if you like, if you like my videos and the stuff that I do, and you feel like you want to, support me too, I also have a Ko-fi, which is also linked down, in the description, as well as in my about to in the YouTube or on Twitter somewhere. But yeah, you don't have to, but it's appreciated, especially right now because I have a very sick dog who is very close to not being with me anymore. And yeah, so anyways, so yeah, I guess that's it for now, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye bye.